Hans Wormhat. In this video, I just want to talk about one other small aspect of why there's so many churches. It's a little bit more than just a divide and conquer tactic. There's kind of a necessity to have as many churches as we do, and it's because there's a lot of old world church buildings that are still here today. And so you have these small towns on some place like, say, the west coast of America, and this is supposed to be no man's land. There were only supposed to be, I don't know what, like Indians out here and no structures. And yet, these alleged, the people who went on the Oregon Trail, when you think of the type of people that went to the West Coast, do you think of, like, what type of people do you think of? You think of kind of rugged cowboy type people. What were these rugged cowboys doing building these structures? And they didn't. That's the thing. They didn't build these structures. Something about these masts is electrical. All the all the little spires, and see how it looks like there's like wiring? It's electrical, and these buildings had their own ability to harness electricity out of the atmosphere. Still today, that's how electricity is harnessed for free out of the atmosphere. But these church buildings are just a perfect example. There's too many of them. They're too nice. The stories surrounding their origin just doesn't make any sense. We're supposed to believe that a bunch of wretched cowboys that had nothing had the means of building these beautiful masonry structures. All they did was refurbish them. They dug them out of the sediment, they cleaned them up, they refurbished them. So I tried to mostly look at churches in Salem, Oregon. Salem is short for Jerusalem, and it is one of Oregon's few high-style Gothic revival churches outside of Portland. You're telling me that these cowboys, these rugged West cowboys, were, you know, these great craftsmen building Gothic revival? It's the story makes no sense. How does that make any sense? Oh, we're just these poor travelers in this new land. Let's go ahead and build Gothic revival churches. They seem so out of place, and the stories never made sense. And guess what? They never really have good evidence of building these buildings. So you just have to take their word for it that they built these things. How often do you see people make masonry buildings with so much ornamentation? And the these people were supposed to be the first people settling here, and you want to tell me that they just jumped straight to this? When you're settling a new place, do you just jump straight to this? It's not like they build a little wooden place to worship. They have these immensely decorated masonry buildings. It's just not believable that they built these. The brick Gothic Revival style church was completed in 1878. So by 1870, the congregation had outgrown the old building, and they're claiming that this building was built in 1878, which means that it took them a whopping 8 years to build that building. They claim that they built this building in 8 years. That's just not believable. And one thing about these buildings is that in the past too, if you go find really, really old buildings, so here's a different building in Yazoo City, Missouri, you'll see these steps, these very steep steps leading up to something like that. This isn't, I mean, you can just see, just look at this building, it's sunk down. Those are new steps that have been added on going up to the old second story. The first story has sunk down and is probably now the basement of this building. But one thing that you'll notice is that these buildings already look old. It doesn't look like a new building. And the electrical masts. That's electrical. These huge vaulted ceilings. They don't build them like this anymore. So sometimes you don't know what's new, what's old, what what has been built modern today. They do a lot of refurbishing. They do a lot of rebuilding these buildings in the style of. But a lot of times I think the only thing that's original is like the foundation of the building. I think a lot of times they just came in and the building wasn't really that salvageable. But buildings like this where I mean, look, this is what they do today. Compare just this really boring obelisk structure to these types of buildings. Why? And they built this in 8 years with all this ornamentation. 8 years. And then this is when they try to build like in the style of. But the foundation of this building might be original old world building. Look, where's the ornamentation? There's no ornamentation here. It's like they can't even do it anymore, even if they wanted to. St. Joseph's was founded in 1853 when Father James Croke, so we're not supposed to call each other father. Back in 1853, they didn't know how to read their Bible, I guess, because the Bible says to not call anybody father upon the earth. So Father James Croke rented a 2-story building on the corner of Church and Chemeketa streets that had been a Masonic hall. A lot of these churches have history as being Masonic halls. The ubiquitous apostle of Western Oregon. All these people claiming themselves to be apostles. Here's another building in Salem. Look at that, really old copper. Yeah, there's electrical stuff going on here. Again, maybe some of this building is built new. Maybe some of this building is really, really old. I don't... Probably a mixture of the two. But this is just classic. These huge doorways and then the steps up to the building. And then it'll look like parts of the building are sunken under. Okay, so this is talking about this. Just look at these buildings. Look how it already looks old in the old pictures. The old pictures, the buildings already look old. This doesn't look like a brand new building. It looks like it already looks old. Sure, they cleaned it up, they refurbished it. And two, what this looks like to me is that this building was made when this city was fully built, and it looks like they didn't have all the space to build this. It looks like they were really constrained with the amount of area that they had to build this building. If this is a new building, and if this is an area that is totally uninhabited up until this point, why would you build a building like this, which is so crammed together? And I wanted to show this because this amazing building, look at how great the photography is. That's another big hoax that they tell you, that photography is new and that back in the day you had to hold still for a whole minute while the picture took. That's lies. Photography back then was really advanced and it was equal to today. Film photography is really high quality. People assume because it's old, it's really bad, but film is really high quality. And then we get these really odd looking. This is allegedly them building this thing. This is the only picture that I could see of them building, and it's of the smaller one. So this more impressive one with the dome, I didn't see any buildings or any photos of that thing being built. But this is likely old time Photoshop. People don't know that back in the day, photo manipulation was very common, and yeah, they could just come in and paint them. They could do cut and paste jobs. Old time photo manipulation is a real thing. I mean, just doesn't this look odd? And this is it. This is the only picture I could find of that grand church being built. Look at the eye sockets. Look at the brow ridge. Low angled back ears. Their cross is tilted. Sideways cross. Sideways is 33. These people did not build this stuff. They simply walked in and claimed it was theirs. Look at the quality of this photo. 1908. Look at the quality. You're going to see a bunch of transformers, tea drinkers. Look at the neck on that one. Hide the neck. Ever wonder why they always hide their neck? Why does clergy hide their neck? All this neck hiding. There's a reason for the neck hiding. Oh, body like a Coke bottle over there on the far right. Gentlemen love their suits. This was really interesting. Look, even back in the day, they got to get their ball earth programming all over the place. This was just some crazy stuff. The alleged lady involved with this amazing church, they had some strange article about founder of Christian Science suffering from cancer and nearing her end is immured at Pleasant View while another woman impersonates her in Concord streets. It just seems like this freak show has been going on for as long as we can remember. This is just a really interesting old newspaper. Look how old this bell already looks. That they did not make that bell. That looks really old already. That looks incredibly old. They found these old places and they just claim that they built them. There's no way that that they just built this. It looks so worn down. There are too many churches like this. Too many churches, too many government buildings. You can be driving through just a small town. There's a very small town near me, but they have these amazing, beautifully ornate masonry, old world. They have sunken first floor buildings, and it's something like, oh, the water department, the this department, and it makes no sense. I'm sure they'll have some story. Oh, this used to be this building. This used to be this building, and now it's just the public works building. But you won't find pictures of it being built, and you'll find too many of these structures. Man, those Oregon Trail people that had nothing and they weren't educated, they sure didn't know how to build a masonry building, didn't they? So I just thought this was interesting, just showing you that they just fill these old world buildings, they fill these old world churches with 501c3 fake plastic Christianity churches. Salem First Presbyterian Church, I clicked on their values and belief thing. I'm just going to flip through it really fast. They didn't mention Jesus Christ once. They don't mention Jesus at all. Really what they're doing is they're virtue signaling a bunch. But they never talked about Jesus. For this reason, we reject divisive, fear-driven voices of intolerance. Further, we offer our concern for the safety and well-being of all our neighbors. That's interesting because their first sentence is saying we reject divisive, fear-driven voices, and then the next sentence they offer their concern for the safety and well-being, which is fear-mongering. They're hypocrites. Salem First. This is all the churches around where I live. They have these rainbow stuff. Everybody's accepted, which, whatever. I mean, I'm not even against that stuff because I understand the truth behind it. I'm against all the lies and deceit and covering up that happens with this LGBTQ thing. If they could just come out in the open and tell people about intersex conditions and how common they are, Free-Martin, Swire syndrome, and how everybody, including your pastor, is inverted, then it makes all this LGBTQ stuff less confusing and it makes it make more sense. Anyways, these buildings are everywhere. There's too many of them. They're all over. Sometimes I think the only thing that's original is just the basement, and then they've kind of been rebuilding it and They're all over. Too many of them. How? There's too many of these churches today. I thought that population is supposed to be growing exponentially. Population today is supposed to be exploding, and we're supposed to all feel ashamed for having children because there's too many people. And yet, why are there all these huge churches that are totally empty today? Those people back then, why were they building these huge buildings that can't even fill them today? And people will start making excuses. Oh, well, back in the day, everybody went to church. Okay, but there's still way too many of these churches. There also was allegedly way less people back then. Look at this. Look at this one that I found. G. You can see like a G. And it's a cube, a black cube. This is supposed to be some, I don't know what type of church. Why do they build them so ugly? Why is this thing so ugly? And they used to know how to build them so much better. Why has there been a de-evolution? Why do modern churches look like this? They look like garbage. And yet they want you to believe that back in the day, these wretched peasants, uneducated, living in filth, they want you to think that they were building stuff like this. All the ornamentation, all that masonry ornamentation. So I just want to tell a story. I mean, every city is like this, pretty much, on the West Coast that I know of. You know those, it's like a little townhouse looking thing, and they have a placard on the front, and it says, oh, this building. And I don't know, these buildings, they get little plaques that the government gives them saying it's a designated historical zone or whatever. So there's a lot of those buildings around the city where I live, and this one in particular, I've been watching this guy, probably a master mason or something. I've been watching this guy refurbish one of these buildings. Something about these orbs too, because what this person has been working on, there's this concrete orb area in front of the house, and this person has been working on this house for months and months on a really small area of this house. And I it just reminds me of how all of this stuff is very specialized, and they don't tell people about their crafts. I've read things on Reddit about somebody saying, "Oh, my dad is a skilled craftsman that does something," and the person didn't even want to explain what their dad did. They were like, "I don't even want to say what it is," and my dad kept his trade. He didn't teach it to us until we were later. It was this whole thing. They're really secretive about this stuff, and uh, I think part of it is their gatekeeping. They know that they know the truth about this stuff, that it's old world buildings from before the flood, and there's people that they dedicate their lives to refurbishing these buildings. And yeah, there's somebody in my town who I see him working there every day. It's been months and months and months, and he works on this little tiny section of this old building. It's very interesting. Free masonry. Free, not costing or charging anything. Masonry, something constructed of materials used by masons. The masonry was free. It was free masonry. Hope you enjoyed this video. God bless everyone.